Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee, March 9th, welcome to the Finance Committee from March 9th, 2022. First, I'm going to read the remote participation plan. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being operated as a hybrid model under Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, 1-786-535-3211 and access code 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at globalgotomeeting.com, join 991-599-357. All supporting material that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. As a preliminary matter, this is Ann Kavanaugh, Chair of the Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Kennedy.
Here.
Ed Coleman.
Here.
Michael Marshall.
Here.
Patrick Jones.
Here.
Town and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. CFO, Assistant Town Manager, Ed Kazanovich.
Here.
Okay. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television, and please note that each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So we're called to order. Tonight, we're going to review and vote on fiscal 2023 budgets, operating and capital. We're looking at the Auburn School Department and Bay Path, and then the finance departments, and debt and interest, pensions and benefits. There are no transfers to vote on and no minutes to review. So we'll start with the school committee. Good evening, Mrs. Chamberlain. Good evening, Celia. Go right ahead.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Beth Chamberlain. I'm serving as the acting superintendent of the Auburn Public Schools. I'm joined here this evening by Mrs. Worsbicky, our business manager, and we're happy to be here tonight. And at the end of our presentation, we'll welcome any questions that you have. So tonight, our budget presentation begins with our title of Continuing Response and Recovery. Response and recovery from many things over the past 2 years, as you are all well aware. And so we hope that what we share with you this evening is in line with the thoughts of the town. It certainly is in line with the goals that we have for our school district. This slide got a little funny on the bottom, so excuse that error. But we come to you again tonight to reinforce our vision for the next year in the Auburn Public Schools, and to note that we've had a laser focus on our goals, our mission, and certainly our core values. All of these came into play in 2018 and will continue to be reviewed so that we stay aligned with the goals of the school and are financially and fiscally responsible. This budget continues to reflect the strategic plan focused on our areas of teaching and learning, technology, health, wellness, and safety, transitions, and certainly community partnerships. Oh, did I go? All right, things are a little bit out of order, but we're going to move right along. So in teaching and learning, in keeping with our school committee expectations, we are focused on keeping our class size in our elementary schools at or below 25 students so that we can maintain our instructional integrity, and to keep appropriate class sizes at both Auburn Middle School and Auburn High School. As I believe you well know, we are committed to the use of technology in our school buildings, and we've had a long time standing one-to-one iPad initiative, where our middle school and high school students all have their own iPads. We have one-to-one capability at the elementary schools, though those never leave our schools. They are just available during the school day. This year, professional development has really taken a bit of a turn, and we've begun a 3-year focus on universal design for learning. This allows teachers to better meet the needs of all of our students by allowing students to have choice in how they learn, how they express their learning, and how they internalize new practices and concepts. We've also conducted an equity audit of the Auburn Public Schools to ensure that all of our students are having equitable experiences and equitable opportunities in our school district. These are really, truly very exciting times for us. We have a strong foundation to build upon, and we believe that universal design for learning and our focus on equity and balances within our district will help make us stronger than ever. We continue to grow and expand our preschool offerings. Some of you know I'm also the preschool principal, and that program has grown tremendously, and we're very proud of what we offer to our integrated preschool students. We also continue to further develop outside of the school experiences for our students, and in the last several years, we've implemented our Encore program that is at 5 West Street for our students who are beyond grade 12 and still need some transitional assistance to be successful in the community, and we're very proud of that program as well. Health, wellness, and safety is a priority. A wide range of commitments fall under health, wellness, and safety, including most recently social emotional learning and the mental health needs of our students and staff. We have developed a strong and stable nursing corps, which came in very, very important over the last couple of years. Targeted supports for students with special and unique needs, facility safety certainly, extracurricular activities, and healthy and nutritious meals for our students. We had a long-standing meal program throughout summers over the last couple of years as well. I share with you tonight for your information our free and reduced meals data. This does tend to fluctuate, but I will tell you this is, I think, my 13th year in the district, and these percentages have slowly climbed over those years. Certainly fluctuated sometimes, but they have definitely climbed. We know all transitions are challenging for students as they move through our schools, and we continue to make opportunities for students, parents, and guardians so that we can ease that transition, so that everyone feels safe and welcomed in our schools, including our new families as they come to us. We've always been an active participant in the Auburn community, which is so vibrant. This year is no exception, and COVID-19 has really further cemented the need we have for one another and our need to work together. We have a positive relationship with Auburn Youth and Family, the Chamber of Commerce, certainly the boards of the town of Auburn. I just want to take a moment to thank Julie Jacobson and Mr. Kazanovich for their support of the district. And I would be remiss if I didn't put a shout out for Darlene Coyle and Eileen Alexander for the support they've given us this year through COVID-19. I could not have survived without them. So I share with you now some of the assumptions and projections that you'll find reflected in our budget. The FY23 preliminary cherry sheet estimates have been released for Auburn, and Chapter 70 preliminary number is $14,035,168, which is an increase in funding of $1,750,607 from FY22 Chapter 70 funding. You will also see in the budget documentation, we have new staff proposed. A 0.6 music staff member, a 1.0 ABA staff member, 2 one-to-one LPNs, and stipends for 2 assistant golf coaches for fall and spring. All positions proposed are due to emerging student needs to be successful. Our supply lines for all classroom supplies have basically been level funded from last year. We use the October 1 counts we use for students at each grade level for consistent data purposes. We have level funded grant monies that will move forward from FY22 for the 240 grant, the Title I grant, the Title IIA grant, as offsets are used to reduce the impact in the operating budget. We project the Medicaid reimbursement to be $100,000 as adjusted and approved at fall town meeting, while also anticipating the use of any carryover funds from previous years if available. Special education circuit breaker reimbursement is anticipated conservatively at 70% for FY23. And we will participate in the school choice program with current available seats at 100 students for only our middle school and high school. And that too has been approved by school committee. Instructional assistants and support ABA staff have been noted in their current assignment in the budget. There will be some movement of that We try to really maximize the use of our staff, so we shift staff based on student need. They don't just always stay in the same school because that's where they were placed for a certain year. We move them along with the students. We continue to budget for 11 regular education school buses, making the assumption that the same number of students will ride, and we've had that for quite some time now. The FY23 bus fee will continue, as is currently in place, with $100,000 from the revolving fund being used as an offset in the budget. Continued offsets from revolving accounts, building rentals, satellite and Galaxy, as well as preschool and athletic revolving accounts are used to offset costs. We recently looked at our oil pricing, so the oil pricing per gallon for FY23 is going to be at $2.90 a gallon. That was done with the French River Collaborative on behalf of the Auburn Public Schools, and that too has been accepted by the school committee. The current electricity contract ends in May of 2022, and we're working with the town on securing a price for the FY23 budget. Certainly things are a bit volatile right now in that regard. We continue to use our solar credits from the rooftop arrays at the middle school and the high school. And our projected offsets total $3,176,336, and that includes $545,440 from Assessor funds that are a one-time source funding for the district. Those are grant funds secured through the government. So in total, we're showing a budget increase of $881,673.88, which reflects a 3.15% increase. I thank you for your continued support, and certainly myself or Cecilia welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chamberlain. So let me look to our members. Kevin, do you have any questions?
I'll let the other members go first.
Okay. Mr. Coleman?
Oh, sure.
Ed?
Through the chair, just had a couple of questions. On the oil, at roughly $2.90 a gallon, is that locked in for the next year, or can that change based on?
Cecilia can address that because she worked hard on that.
It'll be locked in. We were lucky enough to secure oil this year at $1.69 a gallon, but we're locked in for the year for FY23 at the $2.90.
How about on the, and I probably could have found it in the budget, but I was struggling. On the bus transportation contract, is that is that locked in for the next fiscal year?
Yes, it is. We're in year 2 of our contract, and then after year 3, we have an option to extend for 2 more years.
And no change if they have more costs because of gas? Does that stay the same?
We don't have a fuel escalator cost on our contract, so it's prices, as negotiated, so.
Okay. On the teacher or union contracts, is that baked into the budget? If the contract's not finalized, is there a line item for that?
All of our contracts this year have been negotiated previously, so we were able to take and move everybody up on the their salary scale for the FY23. The only contract that needs to be negotiated is the cafeteria, and they are not included in this budget. It's part of their own revolving fund.
Okay. Just 2 other quick questions, and
Sure,
I'll
no
be
problem.
quiet.
Thank you.
I think I saw on the slide 2,618 students. What was it last year? Is that an increase or a decrease, roughly?
I think that's a small increase by perhaps what we would call small, maybe 80 to 100 students.
Okay.
And that comes and goes, and that, we're looking carefully at, we're watching our enrollment very carefully because that can impact our class size, so.
And just one final question. Were there any rough numbers on how many teachers retired for the next year in terms of departures? Is that?
I don't exactly have that number, but I believe there's 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think there are 5 teachers, and we have 2 administrators, our director of pupil services, and one of our principals.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Patrick?
Sure. Good evening, ladies, and thank you for coming in under the weather. I have a couple of questions. You had said to meet the emerging student needs. Can you tell me if the school is back to where it was 3 years ago when staffing in full swing relative to prior to COVID? Because I'm just curious there's still a lag in your budget that you may have suffered from. Some school systems have had to make a lot of adjustments because of a lot of the impact of COVID, and I'm wondering if you find that, you're stable from that, and you could say that you're restored from where you were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, we didn't see any big major loss in our staffing over the last couple of years. The new positions that you see are really in response to student needs.
So you're not replacing something that you may have pushed aside pre-COVID?
No, we're
Okay.
not. So that, like that ABA, that's in response to an increasing need of special education students at our preschool level.
Okay.
So it's really responding to the needs, as well as the LPNs that are noted there. We know we have students coming to us next year that are going to need that level of support.
Sure. The other question has to do with transportation and busing. Are you utilizing all of the buses? I just ask because I'm one of those residents who's impacted by tons of parents driving their children. So are the buses really being utilized?
We
And
are
if
u-
they are, is there some way to contain the fact that so many parents are walking and driving their children to school?
The buses are being used, and most of them are pretty full now that we're kind of going, we're working towards being past COVID. But a lot of parents, it's a personal choice whether they drive their children to and from school. We hope that they'll take advantage of the bus.
Sure, and I don't, at a time when gas prices are about to go over $4 if they haven't already, and we're looking at the utility costs and so many things, if you're finding that you're only manning so many buses, that's really the direction I'm going. I'm not going against personal choice, but I certainly don't want to put a bus out on a route that is going to have one child in it if we can push a bus between two routes.
No, we have buses, our buses are pretty full.
Great.
The only level that I would say they're not as full would be the high school, because a lot of those students tend to drive as they get older.
Sure.
But our middle school are full, and our elementary.
Okay. Those were really two of the focal points that I had. Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you, Patrick. Michael Marshall, would you like to ask any questions?
My colleagues have been very thorough, so I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. And I think you have been thorough. My questions were about busing, so I'm almost surprised there's no, in the transportation cost, there's no fuel escalator clause. Great job negotiating that one, so. And I was wondering about student numbers. I believe last year there was a drop-off in the number of students, if I'm incorrect. Has that number increased back to the prior year?
We lost about 90 students last year with COVID, and then I believe like 55 have come back or returned.
Okay, so then, so they're pretty consistent then? So plus 90, all right. Okay, and that's it. I didn't have any other questions.
I'll come back now that I...
Yes, sir, yep.
Just a quick, we talked last week briefly, part of the opening presentation was working collaboratively with the town relative to an HR director sort of position. Can you just kind of give us your side of how you think that's going to benefit the relationship with the town side and the largest employer being the school side?
Yeah, so I will say, in my time as assistant superintendent and now as acting, HR is a very complicated world, particularly now, right? Things have just become more complicated. And the ability to appropriately, accurately, and effectively support different situations, whether it's a discipline situation, a benefits question, FMLA has now, there are so many nuances to how that works and when people can come back. And I will tell you, as an educator, I was not trained in that, right? So I can't express enough how much we would benefit from that. I think it would be a huge add to the district and to the town to have that support. I mean, there are times that I have to call our attorney because I quite frankly don't know how to handle a situation, but I think if someone were more familiar with employment laws and those types of things, they could be that resource, and I wouldn't have to reach out to our attorney. So would be in full support of bringing a position like that on. I think it would be great.
And for myself, I'm wholeheartedly in support of that. It's refreshing to see both sides. I think we've seen this in my time, that the school committee and Mr. Kaznovich and Julie work very well together. I don't think that's always the case in some municipalities, two ships that run parallel and really never talk other than
True.
when they tell me. So that's great to hear that, you know, you're willing to work collaboratively on that.
Very
You answered my question on the nursing. I mean, having 2 kids in the Auburn schools, I can't say enough about what they've done the last 2 years. Yeah, just amazing.
Amazing.
I wish there was a way we could find money and give them all a bonus for what they've done the last 2 years.
It's been
You mentioned-
remarkable.
You mentioned strategic planning. I was fortunate enough to be on your strategic plan group. I was going back, over 3 years now, Sid?
It was 2018.
Wow. Did COVID derail some of those plans, and do you envision kind of getting that process back on track, or, and that sort of goes to my bigger question, are there things in this year's budget that sort of would kind of to get back to hopefully a sense of normalcy, and then programming and ideas and stuff, we may see some more asks next year or in coming years to kind of, some of your wants?
Yeah, so that's hard to project, right? We do need to revisit our strategic plan. Our work around equity and diversity and having our equity audit is, I believe, going to highlight some areas that we're going to have to improve, and that's a good thing. Do I think that's going to require money? I'm not sure of that. I think it may require us to look differently at how we do things and how we manage the people that we have. But I hope that we will revisit the strategic plan with the input of folks like yourself, so that we can make it so that it's effective. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I will tell you that we have funded some positions with some grant funding, particularly around social workers, because we have seen a tremendous increase in the mental health needs of our kids. How long that's going to be for and what we're going to need to sustain that with, I don't know. But we also have a very strong guidance core at the heart that's already in our budget and has been for some time. And again, I think we're trying to build some programming with what we have, whether it's the Bright programming, which is a program that we have for kids with extended absences who have to reassimilate into the school system and need some help kind of getting caught back up and back into shape to be there, or our enterprise program that can service kids that maybe have more significant, maybe mental health needs, but can still function in a school setting with lots of support. If we can build those things in, we can actually save some money with the staff that we have, and that's what we're using this grant funding, is to kind of give us a leg up to get that going. So I don't anticipate huge asks down the road, but, you know, it's hard to know at this time, because honestly, I feel like we're just getting our feet under us again as far as doing the work of education versus the work of COVID. I spent the better part of 2 years, and I feel like that's all I talked about. And so now when we talk about budget, quite frankly, it feels pretty good, you know? It feels pretty good to talk about things that are more normal. So, yeah, hard to know.
And I've thought several times over the last couple of years, back in 2018, that I think every group that we broke up into in that strategic planning had social and emotional well-being of the students in there. And if you give Dr. Brunel, she had a crystal ball, I don't know, but she led us down that path. But certainly things I think were put in place that helped support the district over the last 2 years, that if they weren't there, I think would have been
Absolutely.
detrimental. So praises there. But no, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, should we look at the CIP? It's the next to last page. I had a question about iPads. Is there a regular, what's the plan in terms of replacing them? What's the lifespan of an iPad, for instance?
We just had a meeting on this the other day. Like, so our tech director will tell you between 3 and 4 years.
All right.
So we are potentially, and these are all preliminary discussions, but looking at, obviously, the students coming into 6th grade need them, because that's when we begin our one-to-one, and then looking at a potential replacement in 9th grade. But then recycling those down. Some of our elementary students, while we are one-to-one at the elementary level in the school building, some of them are very old. So, you know, their life expectancy is not that long. But we're also investigating, there are ways to recycle and get some funding back for old iPads. And so we're investigating that now. So as kids leave the 12th grade and we recycle those down to our younger kids, then can we take the ones that they have that are even older than that and get some money back for them? So we just met with Mr. Bouvier, and he's exploring some options for that now.
Okay, so basically you're buying iPads for the 6th grade and the 9th grade every year? Okay, all right.
we've taken to buying them now as opposed to leasing.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we own them outright.
it must be cheaper, is it, to buy them? You get longer term use on them?
It's a mix, you know.
Is it? Okay.
We've been fortunate. I mean, it almost, if you think about the lease, we were talking about this the other day, it's almost, you're purchasing it kind of over 3 years. You're spacing out the payments, because basically, at the end of the 3 years, we're able to keep them.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not like we have to return them or anything, so,
Mhm.
we end up kind of, but we're not using the leasing part of it anymore, so.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, gentlemen, any questions on the CIP? No? Mike Marshall, do you have any questions on the CIP?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, without any other questions, do I hear a motion to recommend the, let's see, let me read this off first. The fiscal 2022 appropriation for the school department's $27,988,540. The department request for fiscal 2023 is $28,870,214. And as Mrs. Chamberlain said, that's an increase of $881,674, or a 3.15% increase. Do I hear a motion to recommend the $28,870,214 budget?
Motion to recommend?
Second?
Okay, all in favor, and let me do the roll call. Kevin,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Michael,
Sorry about that. Yes.
yes, Mike, thank you. Patrick,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And any opposed? No. So it's recommended, and we'll vote, we vote on the CIP towards the end of our meeting times. We voted it as a total. Thank you very much.
Thank you all
Thanks
for your
coming out
support.
in this
Much
wonderful
appreciated.
weather. Thank you. All right. How do you do, Bay Path? So Ed's good. Do you have a presentation also?
We do.
Okay, good. So he'll get that set up.
Just get out of here.
Oh, Trevor's there.
And before we get started, I just wanted to say I'm on the line.
Good, thank you, Trevor. I just noticed that you've
I'm not seeing
joined the meeting. Thank you.
Just missed the cut on the last one, but I'm here now.
Okay, thank you. Bay Path Vocational School will be presenting very shortly.
Okay.
The mouse is better, the touchpad driving me nuts.
Here we go.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent. Good evening, I'm Kyle Brenner, Superintendent of Bay Path, and with me tonight is our Business Manager, Irene Hool, and our School Committee Representative from Auburn, Mr. Don Erickson, so thank you. So, our budget presentation for tonight is based on the funding from House 1. Chapter 70 and 71 estimates are based on Governor Baker's proposed budget. The proposed Chapter 70 funding for fiscal year 2023 is $12,893,681, which is a $1,307,141 increase over our current funding. Our proposed Chapter 71 funding for fiscal year 2023 is $809,158, which is a $243,339 decrease from the current funding. These are the preliminary estimates, and we will adjust as it goes through the House and the Senate.
Mr. Kesinowitz.
So the impact on Bay Path here, we show that our fiscal year 2022 and our fiscal year 2023, Chapter 70 funding for 2023 is $12,893,681, and that's a $1,307,141 increase over last year. And minimum contribution is for 23 is $9,976,240, which is a $1,409 increase over last year. And the required net school spending for FY23 is $22.8 million, which is a $1.45 million increase over the current year. So FY23 total budget for assessment is $25,899,604. Member towns' assessments are at the minimum, and our budget includes debt service assessment of $1,561,753. Our operational budget does not require funds above the minimum contributions by our member communities, and our member assessment total is $12,090,417. So FY23 total budget assessments is $25.9 million. Oh, no, I just went through that. It didn't advance. All right, hang on. Didn't advance. There we go. All right. Although assessments are at the minimum, it's important to note that the minimum contribution levels that each town must contribute have increased collectively by $144,409. And our member town's transportation assessment has been reduced by $234,995, and that reflects a contribution from a regional transportation reimbursement fund that we set up a couple of years ago. So the financial highlights are our Chapter 70 revenue is $12.8 million, almost $9 million. School choice assessment is $178,647. And our Chapter 71 busing aid is $809,158. We do have a sewer betterment fee assessed of $30,750. This is the last year of the sewer betterment fee, so next year, or the following fiscal year, that will come off. And we are using $50,000 from our excess and deficiency to continue to fund our OPEB liability. A little tough to see on this, but this just breaks down our operational budget. You can see the Chapter 78 at $12,893,000. Our school choice assessment is removed from that of $178,647. Our assessment for minimum contribution is $9.976 million. We have no assessment above the minimum, and we show our E&D $50,000 for OPEB, which brings it to $22,741,274. Transportation budget for next year proposed is $1.565 million. The Chapter 71 aid is $809,158. We apply our transportation reimbursement fund of $234,995, which leaves an assessment of $521,674 on that. Our debt services, our principal is $775,000, and our interest is $786,700, with a total debt service of $1.561,753 million on that. And you see our sewer betterment fee there. So our total budget for assessment is $25,899,604. We remove the, and when we add in the school choice of $178,000, that brings it to $26,078,251. So our budget highlights. We'll be funding new textbooks for social studies. It's part 2 of a 2-year plan. We'll be funding new textbooks for science and textbooks for 12 shop programs, as well as the necessary replacements that we have projected. Supply and equipment accounts adequately funded to account for the inflation. It is level funded, but we account for inflation around 6% for each one of those. Several equipment upgrades for our shops in advanced manufacturing, auto body, auto tech, computer-aided design and drafting, graphics, metal fab, and our web, which is computer programming and web development. For staffing needs, we're looking to add a full-time equivalent school adjustment counselor that's in alliance with our Student Opportunity Act program, and as our colleague said, the increase of student mental health and well-being on that. We currently have one school adjustment counselor, so that's a 1 to 1,200 ratio, and this will cut that in half. We're looking to add another full-time equivalent veterinary science teacher. That'll bring our new program in a partnership with Second Chance Animal Shelter to 2 teachers, and we can increase the enrollment for that program as well. Our electronics shop was down to 1 teacher due to enrollment issues. We increased enrollment in that, so we want to bring on another teacher and grow that to a full program as well. We included wage increases for our union and non-union employees, and our health insurance rates had no increase. If you see any increases, the budget increase allows for new enrollees in that based on our historical increases. Student supports, we have significant programming for our Student Opportunity Act for increased social and emotional outreach and professional development. We have increased offerings for MCAS preparation and remediation, and we have increased offerings to help students that are struggling in their classes. So the FY 2023 freshman seat allocation by town is shown here. It's based off the capital population for each town. Auburn has 2,750. Grand total of all 10 towns is 17,687 students. That's Auburn's portion is 15.55% of the total enrollment or capital population, which equates to 51 seats of the 330 seats allocated for next year's incoming freshman class. And this is the foundation enrollment, which is students that are currently enrolled, and you can see all 10 towns for Bay Path. So we do see an increase of 19 additional students from Auburn next year, projected for next year. FY '22 was 99, and FY '23 is projected at 118 based on the 51 increased seats, or students allocated, not increased, which is a 19% change. And we're at capacity. You see that our projected enrollment for next year is 1,201 students. Right now, we're maxed out space-wise in all of our academic classes on that. And we came to that with the addition of our veterinary program as well. So the foundation enrollment for Auburn Public Schools is projected at 2,425, and for Bay Path, 118, which brings the town of Auburn's foundation enrollment to 2,543 overall, which is a 23-seat increase over the current year. These numbers here, the required local contribution, are right from the state's website. So the current year, FY '22 required contribution is $16.57 million, municipal revenue growth factor of 4.12%. FY '23 required local contribution is projected at $17.256 million, with a shortfall in local contribution of $165,735. When added in, that brings the required local contribution for FY '23 to $17.422 million on that. And down below, you see Bay Path's portion of that based on the percentage rate of 6.91%, equates to $2,247,003. Added to the town of Auburn's foundation budget, that brings the grand total foundation budget to $32,499,000. Again, this just shows the total required contribution is $17.422 million. It's spread among the districts, being the town of Auburn as well as Bay Path. Our share is 6.91%, and again, it reflects the FY '23 required contribution of $1,204,547, which is a $199,389 increase over last year. Again, small chart, Dean Ikabuchi, our former business manager, included this last year, and many of the towns thought it was useful to see the school-age student enrollment over the past several years, with a one-year change of 68 students for Auburn. Last year was 2,682, and this year, FY '23 is projected at 2,750, a 68 student increase on that. Overall, combining our 10-town district, there's a decrease of 539 students on that. So the statement of assessments on this for all 10 of our towns, at the top it's highlighted for Auburn, the minimum contribution of $1,204,547. The population as of October 1st is 118 students, which brings the ratio of 9.83 of the total 1,201 students. On that, that's used to allocate the share of transportation assessment, which was from one of the first slides, $521,674. So Auburn's share would be $51,255. The capital population of 2,750 equates to 15.55% of all 10 of our towns. And that's how we do the debt service and capital improvement costs. The debt service of total of $1.561 million. Auburn share is $242,824,000, and the capital improvement, the sewer betterment fee of $30,750. Auburn share is $4,781, bringing the grand total for Auburn to $1,503,407. And this is a comparison of the minimum contribution transportation debt services over FY '22 with the percentage increases on that. So for minimum contribution was a 19.84% increase of equates to $199,389. Transportation of $24,649,000 increase. Debt service $12,588 increase, in capital improvement $255 increase, for total assessment of $1,503,407 is an increase of $236,881 over current year, which is an 18.7% increase. Any questions?
Thank you. Thanks
Sure.
for the presentation. Gentlemen, any questions? Ed?
Oh, I had a question. Whenever I look at, and thank you first for the presentation,
Sure.
really detailed, makes it a lot easier. I just had a question that's more maybe just for my own understanding. I always look at the total budget divided by number of students, and when I look at, and I don't know if this is more for Ed, but when I look at Bay Path, about 26,1,200 students, and then I look at the school department, 29 million, a little more than double the number of students. Is there an estimate of how much of the school budget is funded by municipal side, like the pension benefits and debt? I was trying to compare like the average cost per student between Bay Path and the schools to kind of understand it a little bit better. Just roughly, not.
Yeah, it's a very complex formula, as Kyle had shown. I mean, there's a municipal wealth factor that comes into the calculation, its ability to pay. When you do a straight calculation based upon the enrollment of the member communities,
Yes.
you're gonna see a disparity
Yep.
between what Auburn is paying and what, like, Southbridge is paying,
Yep.
because
Yep.
we're a wealthier community, and our ability to pay is much greater than other communities.
I mean, because it seems like the cost per student is reasonable. 'Cause when I just do a quick number, the Auburn assessment, maybe like 12,000 or so per pupil, and then in the Auburn school, I think it was like maybe, and I'm just rough, maybe 12,000 or so, but that doesn't include the pension benefits and the debt. So I didn't know if maybe in Bay Path, because it's older kids, trade, maybe just the cost is more expensive.
Yeah, so that's Chapter 74 funding.
Okay.
So on average, don't hold me to this number, but it's about $4,000 additional to educate a student in vocational education than it would be at Auburn High School due to the teacher ratio in the shops, small teacher, and the sheer cost of the capital equipment investment. And then the ongoing, every time you weld a rod, you can't, you get that back, so, right, equipment and supplies. So on average, Chapter 74 funding is higher than it would be for.
Okay, that makes sense. Just one other quick question. On the transportation assessment, is that frozen in the sense of if the transportation, the cost of fuel goes up, can that increase, or is that locked in?
So I believe that's locked in for us for next year, and I'm looking to our business manager on that one. But I think you need the microphone. Yep.
We are currently in year 3 of a 3-year contract, but there are provisions for 2 one-year extensions. So I'll be looking to use, a 1-year extension. Now, whether or not they can wiggle out of that, I'm not sure. So that's one of the things on my agenda over the next week or two, is to nail that down. I believe we're locked in, but I'm not going to promise you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Kevin?
Mr. Brenner, can you just explain sort of terminology-wise? You use the term foundational enrollment. Is there a difference between foundational enrollment and actual enrollment?
No, so foundational enrollment is the actual students. That's October 1 enrollment. And the capital population is school-age children. So our district agreement, now I got to remember it correctly so I don't misstate it, but foundational enrollment is used for transportation assessments, because that's transporting actual students enrolled as of October 1. And then the capital population, school-age children, is used to assess capital costs, like the sewer betterment fee and our interest and principal loans on that. So
Foundational enrollment is what the town of Auburn has for school-age children, but the actual enrollment for kids that are taking advantage of the Bay Path education, you mentioned
so-
51 seats for next year's freshman class, doesn't necessarily mean you'll have 51 Auburn freshmen next year.
we will, because it may fluctuate a little bit, but we just finished and sent out the letters to all students who applied that did get accepted on that, and we're on track to fill all of Auburn's seats.
Okay. And my second question, I understand it's a complicated formula. In past years, Dean had gone over it with us, but I think, for folks that look at these documents online from town are going to notice that percent increase significant for the town of Auburn. I know Paxton's a little bit higher, but overall, the dollar amount isn't nearly what ours is. Can you help us understand
Sure, let me,
why Auburn's got such a, it's almost $200,000 increase alone on the minimum contribution?
sure. And I think what might help is this slide. So we're adding 19 more students from Auburn from this current year. So current enrollment is 99, and projected enrollment for FY '23 is 118. So that's a 19% increase of student population in the school. That's really quick and dirty explanation. It is deeper based on, as Mr. Ed, thank you, stated, we look at the other, the wealth of the town, and that's shown right here, and the municipal revenue growth factor is added in, so, that's getting in, and if Dean had a tough time explaining it, I'm definitely gonna have a tough time explaining that one, but I think it's,
I think that shortfall in local contribution is leading to an increase in our assessment in conjunction with the increase of the 19 students.
yes.
So it's
Double hit.
basically many factors
Factors.
come into the calculation, but those are the two main driving factors.
And one last question, and it may be good that both school parties are here. Dr. Chamberlain, you mentioned 100 students coming into school choice for middle and high school. Do those 100 students get accounted for in our numbers? So are we paying for those school choice students to be in our foundational enrollment numbers?
And I just received the definition of foundation enrollment from Mars, and it talked about school choice. And do you know off the top of your head? Because I could pull the email up. but-
The quick answer is yes. The foundation enrollment for Auburn is every student you are financially responsible for. So that's students going to your schools, students going to out-of-district schools for special needs, school choice students, and the students coming to Bay Path. It does not include students going to private, or religious schools. So that's the difference between capital, which is your school-age population, and foundation.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, if the Auburn Public Schools were to take 20 less, well, that's, I guess, based on the formula, so that's not accurate, but fewer school choice, our percentage, our $200,000 increase would have been less. If we would have,
Okay. In terms of Bay Path, no. Okay, so in other words, the amount that you pay to Bay Path, is based entirely on the number of students coming to Bay Path. In terms of the state's calculations for the total that you have to spend for all your students, regardless of where they're going, that would possibly make a difference, but not in terms of what you're being assessed for Bay Path students.
I believe that what you're saying is that there's a minimum expense per student.
I don't
there's
know
a-
if the state does it. I'm not going to, it's not done per student per se, because every student is put into a different category. So you have to spend a certain amount on pre-K students, which is different than the amount you spend on elementary, which is different versus middle school, et cetera. Then you get extra amounts of money for each one of those classes of students that are English language learners, that are special needs, that are low income, et cetera. So it really isn't on a set amount per student, it's per student of a particular category. It really is complicated.
okay, thank you. I guess just as a comment, I would just hope that maybe we collectively look at that to ensure our ratio of school choice kids that are coming in is not adversely affecting us in another budget area that we may be, in another area. So that's all.
Yeah. If you have school choice students coming in from other towns, that's a plus. So what you're looking for is to have your school choice students coming in exceed your school choice students going out, because that's a net increase in dollars to you. Okay, so when Ed, I'm sure, has those numbers, when he looks at the budget, he's always hoping that that's true.
No, I understand we don't have kids opting out to go to other districts, I mean, due to the strong district that we have. I just want to ensure that the formula isn't being adversely affected on the Bay Path budget because we're taking in, we're such a popular location for kids to come in, that's all.
No, but if I read it and
Yep.
you refresh me, tuitioned-in students, school choice coming in, are not calculated because you don't have the financial responsibility for them. The sending town does, so they're not calculated in. So they're not part of foundation. So there's two school choice. The school choice out is foundation enrollment. School choice in is not for you. It's for the town that's sending them to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see, Mike Marshall, do you have any questions for the superintendent?
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Trevor, do you have any questions for the superintendent?
No questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I
yes.
do.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, go
That's
ahead.
right. I think this may complicate it, but for me, I hope it'll simplify it. But recently, some vocational schools have had a shift in their in-district and out-district ability. So did Bay Path have an in and out of district change? I'm just curious how all of a sudden it clearly says 20 people aren't in Spencer. So did that open the door so that 19 people from Auburn could go in?
So
Because you're at capacity.
So when you say in-district, we're only taking in-district students. So we have a waiting list of in-district students, so we don't take any.
Right, exactly. So
school
that's
choice
my
in.
point. So there isn't that there's a shift, is that the waiting list with in is so large, and we're in district, that we get the rite of passage.
Right, so I don't understand the rite of passage. So if,
Meaning that we're going to be, you're not going to take out-of-district
Right.
students.
We're
That's
not.
rite of passage.
Right.
So you don't have a quota within district or the 10 communities.
We do
You have
have
a
a-
series of communities that have the ability to go before others.
so we do
I
have,
know the
so,
term, there's in-district and out-of-district that's used with vocational school systems, so I'm really asking if you can clarify that as it relates to Bay Path.
sure, absolutely. So we do, our district agreement with our 10 communities allows a quota based on foundation enrollment. So that's how you came up with, or we came up with, let me see.
The 55 seats.
You're right, so that was back here. So our total enrollment for FY '23 is 1,201 students. So we add all the foundation enrollments together and calculate, wait, that's not the one I want.
Freshman
Yeah,
seats.
yeah. Freshman seat allocation. So that's based on capital population, which is school-age children in the town of Auburn. The district, that's what we use per the district agreement. You see all our 10 sending communities here. So Auburn's school-age children report is 2,750 eligible students, and that is 15.55% of the total for our 10-town district of 17,687. Then we know what our incoming freshman capacity is of 330. We multiply 15.55% to that, and that equates to 51 seats allocated to Auburn.
Yep.
So that can fluctuate based on, the fluctuation of school-age children
Right,
per-
because
per
between the
district.
two charts, we're the highest with the new enrollees coming in at 19, and we're also sitting at the highest with the 51 seats. So, I mean, it's clear, sort of in a way, why we're being assessed more. And Ed, to your point, it's because we're AAA rated, and we're such a strong financial community, we just have to bear the brunt of it. I think of it as Cadillac tax, because we're doing so well. My next question has to do with the OPED and the $50,000 and the excess and deficiency. I'm just wondering, in your excess and deficiency, does it ever relate where you have to give any of your communities part of that excess back, since you could assess them if there weren't a deficiency? And you do show an excess because you're funding OPED.
Okay, so two things. In terms of OPEB, the idea is to build it to a certain amount.
Right.
And then at that point, you can now fund either directly from there, or you set kind of a maximum that you're going to fund from your regular budget, to cover retiree insurance, and then pull the other part of it from that OPEB account. So you build to a certain reserve, and then you stop. You don't want to go, you say, okay, now we've got enough reserve, and then as the money comes in, you start paying it back out. So
So are you actually
that's-
saying that you're not increasing the value of your OPED, but that you're
Oh,
actually?
no, we are. No, we're nowhere
Are.
near the point where we're ready to do that yet.
Yeah.
It'll be several years before we reach what, there's firms that do this for us.
No, and I
don't know
understand the
number.
concept of it.
Yeah.
Yep, I do. But I'm just, in your letter, it says that you have an excess of, appropriated from an excess of deficiency funds to continue funding OPED.
Yep.
So my question goes back to excess and deficiency.
Okay, that was the second part of what I was
Okay,
going to say.
yep.
So I just wanted to get the OPEB part clear.
Sure.
Sorry if I over-explained.
good.
I tend
Yeah.
to do that. So the excess and deficiency, what we do is typically use it to fund capital. And we'll come to you and we'll say, look, we've got this many thousands of dollars. Here's a capital need that we have. If we use the excess and deficiency for that, we don't have to come to you to get a special vote, for a capital expense. This year, what we have done, what school committee just voted on this past Monday, was we're splitting our excess and deficiency in half. Half of it is going to a capital purchase, and half of it is in fact being returned to the towns in the form of a credit on their last quarterly payment for the assessment. So
And-
for Auburn, that's approximately $7,900, I think $7,981.
And will Auburn see that benefit and that credit in their first quarter payment? Or do they
No,
make-
it has to be spent for this year, so it'll actually come off of the fourth quarter payment for the fiscal year '22 budget.
So it's coming off the fourth quarter, not being altered on the first quarter?
Correct, again, because excess and deficiency has to be spent within that same fiscal year, following the year in which it was earned, so to speak.
I'm with you. And then my last question is really sort of a little bit, just trying to clarify the 10 communities that you have, just to be sure they're all what you would say in district.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
say that again? I'm
That
sorry, if
all
you
the
heard
10
me, go ahead.
communities that are in your budget now are all in district?
Yes,
Great, thank you.
absolutely, yep.
Okay.
Just one last one. Congratulations on the vet tech program. I know that's been a huge success, and I can imagine just will continue to grow for the school. And this is sort of just a comment and a wish, as I see one of our future budget items, and every year we have discussions on it. Any plans for an agricultural program at Bay Path? Because we end up with sending students out of district down to Norfolk, and it becomes a fair, it's a great program, fair expense for our communities and the surrounding communities that are sending students quite a distance. And it's just a comment maybe for our school committee member representative that's here and yourself, that it certainly would be on everybody's radar. If Bay Path started an agricultural program, I think everybody would be in support and see a savings all around.
Absolutely. No commitment from me on that, but we are looking, when we added the program, we did it under animal science with a concentration in veterinary science, because that's the population we're working with the second chance. And the state is looking at parsing that out and creating a separate, it's a SIP code called for veterinary science and a separate one for animal science on that, because there's a lot of large animals and things that you don't do. Our preference to the state is we stay in the category of animal science, which would allow the opening of that door in the future, rather than pigeonhole just for veterinary science. So it all comes down to space and money, though, right? So, yeah.
Okay, that was just a comment, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms.
We have an ag program. I taught there for 34 years. I wasn't like this, I was young then. But we had an ag program when we used to kids that there were more cows in town than there were people. Now all the farms have gone. I worked at Hillcrest Farm up here when there were cows.
Sure.
And that's been gone. So it's sort of little because of the farm leaving. So, that didn't become an output.
Sure,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, I just have one question. It's regarding transportation. You made reference to a regional transportation reimbursement fund.
Yes.
Is that money that comes from the state?
I'm going to
Yep.
turn it back over. She can explain how it was set up. It's
Yep.
something that Dean set up a few years ago. And
Yes, it is. So what that is typically because of the changes in the budget from the governor's budget in January until the final budget, which this year happened to be in July, we usually, or at least the last couple of years, we're getting more money back than we had originally budgeted. So by setting up the Transportation Reimbursement Fund, that money went there rather than into excess and deficiency. With the stipulation, this is how that fund works, it must be spent in the following fiscal year for transportation. So what we do is we do in fact return it to you in the form of reducing what would otherwise be your full transportation cost assessment. So that's what it is. So every year that account zeroes out on June 30th. And then the next year, whatever excess we get goes into that fund, and we use it to reduce your transportation assessment for the coming year.
Okay, thank you. So continue with a question about transportation. I've noticed on the breakout of the 10 communities that every town is basically a double-digit increase in transportation. And if we're still in the middle of a contract, why is that happening?
so,
I can
if you have it,
explain that
you
if
can
you want
explain
me
it.
to.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
It was a significant,
It's because of the decrease in the amount of money in the Transportation Reimbursement Fund. The state is reimbursing at a slightly less percentage, and they base it on the amount that you spent the previous year. So for fiscal year '20, okay, for fiscal year '20, we had a much lower cost because we didn't send anyone to school at all. Now, for fiscal year '21, we were a little bit different because we were open. We were bringing in half of our kids every week. So I think we spent more than the state thought we were going to. So we're hoping, to be honest, that that number's going to go up. But that's why there's the big change. Okay, we had a huge decrease. One of our years, we had over $400,000 in our transportation reimbursement fund. In fact, this year we have that. Next year, if everything tracks exactly as forecasted, it would only be $234,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Mike and Trevor, do you have any other questions?
All set.
I'll sit, okay, do I hear, let's see, let me read these first. The fiscal 2022 appropriation to Bay Path, $1,262,707. This year's request for fiscal 2023 is $1,503,407. That is an increase of $240,700 and 19.06%. Do I hear a motion to recommend the number?
Motion to recommend?
Second?
Thank you. So let's do the roll call. All in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Brenner, for coming in. Ms. Hool, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so now we're going to look at the finance departments. Thank you all for coming in tonight.
Thank you. All right.
Drive
Appreciate that.
safely.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking at the finance department. We will end up voting, I'll read the final number for the finance.
Can you give me a number? I'm like tabbed all over here.
Yes, it is,
135.
135.
Thank you. Oh, good. I keep going by it. It's in the middle.
Okay, so we'll be voting on the bottom line number, and I want to read this off first before we talk about the individual departments. So the total finance department had a fiscal 2022 appropriation of $798,536. The amount requested this year is $858,475. That has a $59,938 increase, or 7.51% increase. So let's look at our first department is accountant. Okay, any questions on that department?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Casanova, can you just explain, I know you've done some planning for the future, relative to, some assistance in that. I'm noticing that you have an assistant town accountant position in there, but obviously, is that a part-time position, or is that a shared position, or what exactly is that?
No, so I want to just highlight some of the aspects that apply to each of
Okay.
the three departments.
Thank you.
So for the most part, E&S is level funded, all but for the accountant. We have a new assistant, and so we are investing in training and certification. So if the town accountant should leave, we want to be able to call up the assistant to serve as town accountant. So there is a value to that. When you look at the assistants in the accountant's office and in the treasurer's office, those positions were appropriated under clerical. We stripped them out. They're not clerical positions. Clerical positions are union positions. These are bylaw positions. They're assistants. They should show separately. So you're gonna see a reduction in the clerical as an offset of stripping those out.
So are you saying like an assistant assessor is not a union position because it's not clerical, it's, okay,
So the assistants, over the years, were lumped in with the clerical.
right, yeah.
Not union positions.
Okay.
Their management.
Their management. So we wanted to delineate those. And so we made a bump in the assistants' positions because, first of all, they were clerical positions, believe it or not, making more money than the assistants' positions, and it created a problem. So I think we identified that over the years. They've outpaced the assistants' position. We need to make adjustments because it's tough to fill those positions.
Did you make them non-union management also for succession planning?
They've always been, well, years ago, they were union positions. Years ago, we took them out of the union and made them non-union positions because they're serving as the department heads in the absence of the department head. And so that should be a non-union position. We also made an adjustment in the chief assessor's position and the treasurer's position. Our comp showed that we were well below comparable communities, our 14 comparable communities. As a matter of fact, we were concerned that we may lose, especially since COVID, and these positions have really taken off, and they're paying a lot more than what Auburn is paying, even at the adjusted salary. So we had to make a bump, at least to retain what we have. These concerns were brought to our attention directly from the department heads themselves. They know they have the ability to earn more money elsewhere. We had to make a correction, or we're gonna lose some talented people. So that's been built into the budget. And that's basically the highlights of the changes that have been recommended in FY '23, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, let's see, questions? Any other questions about the accountant department?
Just a quick question, and it relates to what you just discussed, was the retention, and we're training these people up. You know, these are obviously people that have degrees in accounting, I don't know if they're CPAs, but and municipal accounting is a unique beast from what I've learned in my time on Finance Committee. Do you have a plan to sort of get these folks up? We ran into this issue with inspectional services in the past several years, and I think it's been corrected to some degree, where we had inspectors and whatnot that we were training up, getting them to high level, and they were being siphoned off, stolen by other smaller communities that were paying them significantly more. So that's my concern, is this plan, and I'm sure you've got a handle on what your thoughts are, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are for the future, because when I look at these numbers, I just don't know how you retain some of those
Kevin, that's a
salaries.
great question. So Julie and I have discussed this, especially as it applied to certain individuals within the FY '23 budget. We fully intend to do another salary survey, kind of bring that up to date, and to show where we are placed with other communities that we identified as comps. I think a good indication of how much these positions are needed, if you just look at the MMA website and look at the open positions, it's overwhelming. I can tell you, and I know Patrick is.
I was going to make a couple of comments about this too, but go ahead.
So, you know, I mean, years ago, you would look at MMA, it may be limited to a page or two of open positions. Now, there are hundreds of positions that are open throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. These positions are very difficult to fill. They're calling retirees back. Other communities are trying to rob from other communities because there's no one out there to fill the position. So, so it is a concern, and you know, we've lost a few people along the way, and we can't afford to lose any more. So,
Did you ever take the position of where they require significant educational background and certifications, and there's a whole bunch of accounting, whether it's CPAs or sort of giving, like, you know, an educational incentive or steps based upon their certifications that they obtain, whereas the entry-level management position in other departments may not require the same certifications and educational requirements do you?
We're doing that for our assistants. We want to give an incentive if they're all taking professional development and they're getting their certification. Upon certification, we'd like to give them a bump. What that bump is, not only that, but it gives us some security that those individuals can now serve as division heads because they got their certifications.
Yeah, it's just, we talk about a plan for the future. I know myself, if I'm still, on this committee in several years, or whenever you decide to move off into retirement, I truly get nervous because no, really, of what you do and how well you do it for the town, and, how you're able to break down very complex things for, myself, who's not a financial guy, to explain things. So, you would like to start to know who these folks are and who the next voices for the fiscal responsibility of the town are going to be, so, yeah.
And quite honestly, that's why we brought in a town accountant, because he is a very seasoned individual. He has close to 30 years' experience in municipal government. He served as CFO in the city of Worcester. He's positioned well to fill in if there's a void that occurs as a result of whatever, but, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Julie and I often talk about succession planning, and it's very important at all levels. Because if you lose a key individual and an office is rudderless, then it's a problem for the entire organization, not just for that one department.
I think what I just wanted to add is the town's move to bring in an HR director will help cultivate and sustain strong talent. What you want to do is, and to your point that they do move on, but there's a lot of reasons, not just that they could be mentored and develop something, but if they're led poorly, or if there's other issues that are not having them want to stay, no matter how good of a job you do, they're going to move on. The trick is to keep them from looking for the carrot. And if you have proper succession planning and you reward them by taking a certification, you find that in many, and I won't say communities, because we know, like he has said, there's hundreds of pages of state auditors, and you name the position, and there's so many out there. But I think, to his point, that if you align the pay scale with the ability to mentor and to get certification and for them to earn something, your retention rate is going to be a lot stronger, because they're not going to be so quick to jump. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So it's sort of like the Bay Path formula. Cultivating and retention is a very complex formula. You can't just bring an employee into any business anymore and just expect them to stay because that's their job. You have to cultivate them. You have to contribute and invest in them and give them a reason to invest back in you. And I think, to the point where they're looking to redesign with school and the city a whole HR department to take on job descriptions, to put in merit and abilities to learn more and grow and certify really does, help. And I think to move some of these departments out of the union and into management gives them more motivation, because they can be more effective in a higher role, if some of that helps.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so continuing, any other questions? Mr. Coleman?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Patrick, do you want to add any other questions?
Am I the only one with a page 3 that has a series of numbers but with no, do we know?
That's meaningless, so.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
All
just
right.
thought maybe something got cut off.
All right, so I'll ask our members who are participating remotely. Mike, do you have any questions for Mr. Kazanovich regarding the Finance Department budget?
No, I'm all set.
Thank you. And Trevor, do you have any questions for Mr. Kazanovich?
No.
Thank you. Okay, I guess my only other question, Mr. Kazanovich, would be, are we going to see an article from the assessor for revals? For getting an outside,
No, that has been addressed. That was addressed at the fall town meeting.
okay.
So that's
all
going
right.
to carry through. It's going to start this spring,
Yeah,
and it will carry into the summer with a certification in September.
okay, thank you. All right, well, looking back at the final number, let's see, so we're looking at a department request of $858,475, which is an increase of $59,939 to last year, which, or I should say the year we're in now, and that's a 7.51% increase. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor, let's do a roll call. Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Any opposed? No. Okay, so that's, budget is approved. And now we're gonna look at pension and benefits, correct? Or debt first, debt and interest. So that would be,
541?
Thank you.
that's public services.
That's public service.
So we want,
710.
710.
I will let them know, Don.
Yeah. It's a good thing I'm wearing my glasses, you know, right?
If anyone here would like to go for a tour through Bay Path, I'm retired, so I have no life anyway. Please contact me. I've given him the information.
Okay,
Yourselves or the selectmen.
okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Glad to take you through.
Okay, Mr. Erickson, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
All right, so looking at maturing debt. The fiscal 2022 appropriation maturing debt, $4,043,015. Department request for this year, $4,393,379. That's an increase of $350,364, or an 8.67% increase. Mr. Kazanovich, so GOB is general obligation bond,
Correct.
and that would include, what's included in that?
So, the increase is a result of a number of things. We
Okay.
retired some debt, and we assumed some debt, roughly $5.3 million general obligation bond, 10-year purpose, that we went out for in November. So this debt schedule does include the first-year debt payment of that obligation, as well as the interest in the other sections. So between assuming new debt of $565 and retiring debt of roughly $210,000, it nets out to $350,000.
Okay,
Now, looking at our capital for this year, we bond roughly every other year. So we would go out for a short-term note in November-ish, which means we would, on a short-term note, we would have an interest payment on the one-year renewal date, which would put us into FY '24. The following November, we would bond our short-term notes for the current year as well as this year.
so you put the two together for
Put
the
the two
2 years? Okay,
Now, that may change, all depending on interest rates. We try to capture the best rate when we can.
yep,
Certainly, we know rates are going up, so if we see an opportunity, or recognize an opportunity to bond before the market really goes crazy, we may decide to bond in the fall, at which time we would request an appropriation at the fall town meeting.
okay. And we are paying the middle school debt. Which is the middle school debt on this?
There are
slide?
several issues, and there's a combining
Okay.
issue there.
All right,
A lot of these general obligations, if you look at the large ones, 16,425,000 in the 12, we know that has a middle school component in it.
yep,
But it also includes other debt, whether it be CIP or other loan authorizations that may have been granted for sewer projects or whatever.
yep,
We don't go out and borrow specifically for that purpose, we do a combining. So I would have to provide to you the actual OS or the bond prospectus that breaks that out.
okay. And that's not necessary, but let me ask, what is an SRF loan?
That's a sewer rate revolving fund.
Okay, so that's for the sewer department.
And that's an outside the debt limit borrowing?
Sewer is outside the debt
Yeah,
limit, yes.
yeah, I just verifying.
So we are going to be continuing to pay middle school debt until, what year?
So I think the middle school has been open now, is this the fourth year maybe? Probably a
Okay.
20-year purpose, we probably banned it for two. So I would say probably 30, 35-ish?
Okay, 2030,
20, yeah.
2030?
Oh, no, it's a 20-year purpose, so if we're into it for 4, minus 2 is 6, 14 years.
Oh. 2036 or so.
Yeah, roughly 2036.
Okay. And, of course,
Actually, if you look behind, you have a debt schedule
yes,
behind
oh,
you.
I see, yep. Yep,
So the 2014 for 16 million, we retire it in 2034.
okay, gotcha. And the high school, will be paid off with its last payment fiscal 2024.
Correct.
Wow.
2024, you said?
2024, yeah, is the last, so we're gonna pay for 2023, and then pay for 2024, and then the high school will
And
be
they'll
paid
want to
off.
build another one.
Public safety building.
All right, so, and let's see, any questions about the maturing debt?
I have a question.
Patrick?
I'm just curious, in the summary page here, on this one, is it possible, or on one of the other schedules, sort of at the beginning, I was looking at this, and it wasn't clear to me if the actual mature date was part of, see where it says 2014 to 2024?
Right.
Is that the actual mature date, or is that just
That's the term of the
the
bond.
term of the borrowing?
Yeah,
So each one of these, it's right at the very beginning where it says date issued, it's the date of the borrowing and the date of the payoff.
yes.
Just clarifying, great.
Yep,
Because I noticed in some places, it went out only to 36, and I thought I saw one that, it says 28 now that I look at it, it doesn't say 38. Okay,
all right,
didn't want to
thanks.
assume.
Thank you, Patrick. Kevin, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, and Ed, do you have any questions?
No?
And for our members participating remotely, Michael, do you have any questions?
I'm all set.
And Trevor, do you have any questions about the maturing debt?
No.
Thank you. All right, so we have this year's request for the maturing debt is, again, $4,393,379. That's an increase of $350,364, or an 8.67% increase. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Ed. So, all in favor, let's do the roll call. Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that carries, and now the next thing we're gonna look at is the, interest. So the fiscal 2022 appropriation for the interest, line was, $1,115,994. The department request for this year, $976,356. That's a reduction of $139,638, or a 12.51% decrease. Do you want to address this, Mr. Kazanovich? Make any
Sure.
comments?
So I want to refer you back to the maturing debt section with that amortization schedule. You're going to see the breakdown of the interest by purpose. that ties into that number.
Yep.
Just as you did see, and they're highlighted in yellow, I highlighted in yellow.
Did highlight it, yeah.
So that's the purpose, and those are the interest obligations for the bond issue for FY '23.
Okay, thank you. Good, thank you. All right, members, any questions?
Just
Yep.
quick math question. So I'm looking at that amortization schedule for the subsequent year, so we will see, are those numbers we'll see for next year, or because we may have,
So if you look at that schedule,
Yeah.
FY '24, provided we do not bond any additional monies, although there may be a short-term interest payment, all depending. That should go down to $792,000 in FY '24.
but potentially you said every other year, so the 25 year, we potentially could be bonding on your same schedule, so that one could go up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ed, any questions?
No, I'm good.
Patrick, any questions?
I'm good.
Good. All right, so let me ask our members who are participating remotely. Michael, any questions?
I'm all set.
And Trevor, any questions?
No.
All right, thank you. So the department request is $976,356. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Second?
Thank you. So let's do a roll call. All in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you, and myself, yes, so that's approved. And I believe that, we're gonna look at pensions.
Pension and benefits.
Pensions and benefits, yep, it's always a good one. All right, fiscal year 2022 appropriation, $12,764,972. This year's department request, $13,566,218. That's an increase of $801,246, or an increase of 6.28%. Mr. Kesnovich, do you want to talk about that one?
Sure. So we know what the Worcester County retirement assessment is. That number has been given to us. We are going to take advantage of a $78,000 savings, almost 79, if we pay that
Yep.
at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we've done that. Probably this option became available maybe the last 4 to 5 fiscal years. We've always exercised that option. It just makes sense to do that. If we had a cash flow problem, I may not recommend that, but our cash balance is very healthy. And given the rate of return on our cash, it's minimal anyway, so it's not as if we. If
Which
the interest
insurance
rate
are
were
you
higher,
paying?
If the interest rate or return on our investments were higher, we may reconsider that option. but
Okay,
It makes all the sense in the world to do that. The only unknown, everything else we indexed Medicare by a value of anticipated COLA. Everything else is fixed. Unemployment comp is manageable now. Our claims are low.
yep,
The group insurance, we're losing Fallon. The Insurance Advisory Committee just voted, is it this week or last week, to go with a new provider as a substitute to Fallon called Always Health. But I don't know if we're gonna have any migration through open enrollment. So we're just making an assumption that all of the Fallon subscribers may go to Always. The Fallon plan, or Always, is, in terms of premium, is very comparable to what Fallon would have come in with. But Harvard Pilgrim is higher. In terms of network coverage, in terms of providers, I think Always covers about 97, 98% of what Fallon coverage had. So it makes sense that a lot of Fallon will just migrate over to ours, but I can't be certain about that. So we won't know until open enrollment. If there is a greater migration from those Fallon, instead of always to go to Harvard, it may cost the town a little more because our share of the Harvard is greater than that of always, so. Right now, we believe we're adequately funded. Quite honestly, even if there was a migration, we should be able to fund that through our trust. We have a very rich self-insured trust. We have about 10.5 million. We tend to use that to
That's
leverage
excellent
increase.
for a city, town this size.
Excuse me?
10 million's really good for a town this size.
Right. So I think our average claims on a monthly basis is about $400,000. So typically, they want the trust to reflect about 5 to 6 months of actual claims. So we're well above that. We're doing very well. As a result of having a healthy trust, we typically offer our employees a premium holiday too during the year, because that's their money as well. The town of that.
So they do have an option, Harvard Pilgrim or Always. All right, any questions?
Harvard Pilgrim's merging with Tufts, so they're in a 2 to 3 year merge to going to .32. So you're aware that Harvard's not going to stay Harvard, or is it an offshoot of Harvard?
No, we had a bid from HPI, which is an offshoot of Harvard.
Okay,
So.
so it's HPI, it's not directly Harvard?
Right.
Okay. Okay, and you said something about paying something in full. I was just trying to clarify which one of these you just said, because I thought you said 75,000, or you said one of you were taking advantage of the premium, paying it in full, and I didn't get which line item you were referring to.
Okay, so if you look at 517701, Worcester County Retirement, 4,000,000.
Yep,
We would pay that in full on July 1.
that's what you would pay in full. Okay. And that would reduce the balance of the trust down to about 6 million? Or is that has nothing to do with coming out of the trust?
Nothing to do with the
Right.
trust.
Okay,
That's for the retirement, just the
Right.
non-health insurance. Yep.
right. And that, and because you'll pay, it's probably, what, if I hear you correctly, what you're anticipating is that it's going to be more, but because you're going to pay it in full,
Yes.
that's going to be the amount. So
So
that's
it-
what we're recognizing, that it
Right,
could
it'd be
be
like
4.6 million or something. I don't know if you
Just
get
if you add 78 to the 4,279, that's what our assessment really is.
78, okay, 78,000. That's a good-sized credit. Do we get any credits for any training or anything in general liability or any of the other, do we get incentives within our healthcare or anything like that, that our employees can go for, like, gym memberships and, check reimbursements back into their pocket?
Yeah, there's a Get Fits program that allows an individual annual reimbursement of $400 if they're a member of a gym or they're some health type.
It's an annual reimbursement of 400?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's through Fallon
That's through
currently,
Fallon.
right? Yeah.
So when you go to Always Health in Harvard, HP1, are they going to mirror that benefit, or will you lose it and have
I
to regain
don't know
it?
about the health fits, but I know we get a reimbursement on prescription drugs
Yeah,
on a quarterly basis from Always.
yeah.
We estimate that may be $200,000 to $300,000 a year, and that we would work back to the employees by offering premium holidays or things of that nature.
But it's also important to realize that the increase in healthcare is partly due to all of the pharmacy. That's a big chunk of all of the increases. So the fact that we have the pharmacy benefit is good. Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kevin, question?
Just, I think we keep coming back to this potential HR study and an HR director. And I think this is one of those sections of the budget that sort of, it's a big cost. And it's, when we look at each department head and they're looking for another position or they're looking for stuff, it doesn't seem like a big percentage, but then when I see this page here, it's sort of that underlying cost.
Yeah.
that
Right.
Some of these are the costs they keep on giving because it goes on through their retirement and healthcare and disabilities, unemployment. And I just wonder if that HR director too will be just another avenue to maybe streamline some of these positions or positions within town that maybe are duplicating efforts or, you know, just taking a closer look.
That's why I asked the question of both the schools, if they were restoring themselves back from maybe a downsizing of COVID, because I wasn't on the finance committee a couple of years ago to see that they may have lost people. But it does appear like, you know, I don't know that, I know that part-time people have to pay into OBRA and so forth. I don't necessarily know that some of these benefits, some of the people we heard tonight seemed like they'd be part-time. So there weren't a lot of FTEs that were really being added.
That's a great point. I just want to emphasize what Irene brought up from BayPAP in terms of OPEB trust. This is why we emphasize feeding the trust, because when you get to that benchmark or to a certain level, a portion of our healthcare costs are increasing because of those individuals who are retired. That money can work to mitigate the annual offset in healthcare costs. And you like to get it to a point where even just the interest you're earning on that OPEB trust
Covers the
hopefully
annual
come back
costs.
into the general fund is a funding source to help mitigate those annual increases, so.
That won't happen in our lifetime, but we can prepare for it.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. I know we ended up with a few years back, a financial policy relative to the OPEB.
So we really need to tighten up on our OPEB policy.
And
Come
contributions.
up with that benchmark and to, you know, determine how these funds are gonna be invested. And what's the best return that we can get on, you know, even if we were to set up an investment portfolio. But there has to be done by designing a plan that gets you a benefit not only in the short term, but in the long term. So there's a short-term plan and a long term.
Because I know our policy was conservative, yet it was a larger number than most municipalities are putting towards it. And then I listened to BayPAP talk about a $50,000 number, which is just truly a drop in the bucket to try and
Right.
get to that.
Right.
And I forget how, the number was a big number that they wanted you at in terms of a,
Well, because part of it is they're assessing the risk that you can have in your population based on the employees and the challenges that they face while they're employed with you. And then they do an actuarial study, and they project it out based on how sick or how long their life expectancies are, and what, you know, then they take into account inflation and all these other aspects that, you know, actuarials are already like 10 or 15 years down the road, knowing, so it's a, you know, some of these are extremely complex formulas. You know, we're not going to fix them here tonight. It's like- Oh, we'd love to.
Ed, do you have any questions?
Ed, is there any kind of like way down the road talk with municipalities about, it's never a popular topic, but eliminating the whole concept of a pension? I know that probably never worked, but it just,
No, despite what you're seeing out in the private sector, a lot of pension systems can't fund their liabilities, and they dissolve or, no, we're on a funding schedule, based upon actuarial study that's done, that puts us fully funded like in the year 2034.
There's mass general law that says certain
Yeah, you-
retirement things have to be funded by like 2039,
Okay.
2040.
Something like that. I know
Yeah.
they've extended it over the years,
But they want to see you working towards it.
yeah.
yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I'm not saying they should eliminate pensions, but it just, you know, a lot of cities.
Yeah, but you have to
Well,
remember,
they
people
could
paid in there.
never eliminate pensions because we're not part of a social security.
Right, we're not paying
system.
into social security, so we don't
So-
have social security, and everybody else
Yeah.
gets that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can't eliminate them, they won't have anything.
Right.
Yeah,
Unless they evolved it, like all new hires, and then they would pay into social security, but then you'd have to adjust their wages, because they'd expect.
But they
higher
did that
wages.
in 1986.
Oh,
What
did
they
they?
did was they did force people, so if you worked in a municipality, and you know this better than any of us here, if you worked in a municipality before 86 or 89, you were automatically had to get into a pension program. But after that, if you were working for the city of Auburn, and then you left and you didn't work for a year and went somewhere else, you had to go on to social security, because you couldn't bridge your pension.
Right.
and new employees are paying a higher retirement contribution than older employees, am I correct in that?
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I pay 8 or 9%.
Right.
And guys coming on now pay 12 plus a factor, so
Yeah, I
there's-
think the
there's-
pre-1976 employees, and they're probably all out of the system now,
Yeah.
they were paying 5%.
Wow.
After 76, 7, And then in the early 80s, I think it went to 9%, then 9 plus 2%.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let me ask our members who are participating remotely, Michael, do you have any questions?
I'm all set.
Thanks, Michael. And Trevor, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make one note. In fiscal year 2019, we're paying Worcester County Retirement $2.9 million, and this year requested 2023 is $4.3 million. That's a 48% increase, if I'm reading it correctly, in only 4 years. Is that, do you think, due to more retirees that, or just, or a decrease in returns on investments?
I think it's a combination of things. I think if you look at the historic trend, we've been trending at 11-12% increase every year.
Okay.
So, like you said, 4 years, that's roughly the number that you... You're not seeing the rate of returns, especially in the last 3 or 4 years that you saw years ago. I mean, even interest income is a general fund revenue on the town side. We used to get like $400,000 a year. We're lucky if we get $60,000 a year. So that return on investment would go back into the retirement system as a funding source to minimize the amount of assessment. That return is no longer there.
Okay. Any other?
And I think a lot of municipalities got themselves in trouble
Yeah.
because they had risky investments that went belly up. Orange County, California, I think everyone's familiar with
Yeah,
that.
that one.
So, you know, that risk element kind of played into the being more of a, like a, you want a modest return, but you don't want to.
Right.
There's certain provisions that allow you certain risk factors, so.
I was living in California when they ran into all those troubles, so I used to read about in the paper, and that was an elected position, the treasurer of Orange County. And if I recall correctly, the treasurer was looking for advice about where to invest, and one of his resources was his astrologer. So, that tells you that, yeah, that wasn't gonna work. All right, so, fiscal year recommendation for pensions and benefits, $13,566,218. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Thank you. So, let's do a roll call. Kevin?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that's recommended. Okay, and I believe that's it for this evening. Does anyone have any questions? No? So next week, just so I can, we can be prepared, next week, we're going to have, oh, I didn't
Madam
write.
Chair, police,
Yes, sir.
fire, and emergency management next week.
Police, fire, emergency management, thank you. And it's in an email that Sharon sent us. Any other questions? No? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, so moved. All right. Thanks, Rich, all set.
Let me know when you shut that off.